2011 has certainly been a year with lots of ups and downs for both players and countries. And in this segment of MTN Football Webcast, we'll take a look at a couple of those. Alongside me, I have Dwayne DeLocca. And Dwayne, let's start off with some of the biggest disappointments of 2011. And let's look at the African Cup of Nations qualifiers. We saw teams like South Africa, Cameroon and Nigeria, all three not qualifying for this continental showpiece. Tell us, what went wrong and what does it mean to these countries?
There certainly were a great deal of shocks in terms of larger teams, more fancy teams not qualifying. South Africa were leading their group quite significantly halfway through the stages. Couldn't really do much in terms of finding results in their last three fixtures to find the points that they needed to get through to the actual competition, the finals proper. But also in their group, I think, is a team that really should have felt disappointed that they didn't make it. Egypt, three-time champions leading up to this Africa Cup of Nations, they are not at the Africa Cup of Nations in 2012, and I think that is a huge blow to Egypt as a nation. They've just come out of a huge political crisis. In fact, things are still not quite stable in the North African country. This is a side whose football league has been thrown into all sorts of turmoil. You look at the many negatives that have been highlighted about this Egyptian side over the past couple of years, including the fact that they've got an aging team. They really have lacked in bringing through young talent and blooding new talent, despite the fact that their youth teams have been doing particularly well. But we're seeing now the emergence of the Hegazis, the great young under-20 defender, Mohamed El Shenawi, probably the greatest goalkeeping talent on the African continent at the moment, or young goalkeeping talent, I should say, in my personal opinion. You look at these players and you think, where have they been? Where have they come from? Why are we only seeing them now? And perhaps the fact that the older generation, they're literally 33, 34, 30, in some cases 37, still playing for the national team. Whereas many other countries, you're looking at the younger generation coming through. They're starting to blood them now because of the great successes of the under-20s and under-23s. And I think Egypt will rise again. I think for Nigeria, similar sort of situation. You've got to ask questions, what is happening in Nigerian football at the moment? Their Olympic team failed to qualify for the Olympic Games. Their women, for the first time, have failed to qualify for the Olympic Games for the first time ever after huge disappointment losing out to Cameroon. You look at the African Cup of Nations, the Super Eagles proper, they just couldn't get going, and by the time they realized they needed to start playing, and they did start claiming some decent victories, it was too little too late. They were always chasing the game, so to speak, and they weren't able to find the success that they needed, while those above them, Guinea, didn't end up dropping the necessary points that they needed to qualify for the African Cup of Nations. Cameroon, similar sort of story, losing out to Senegal, but they really are or were their own worst enemies when it came to qualifying. And of course, we continue to see political situations getting into it. Samuel Eto'o leads a strike, now he's banned for 15 matches, and we're seeing a huge amount of niggle between the players and the federation. And I think when you've got situations like that, the national team is never going to be a success.
Certainly, Dwayne, it's never nice when political situations affect the football in certain countries.